Hello again, this is Randall Meek with the Philippines Project, and I'm here today with another video, and it's going to be about building a house in the Philippines, or how to build a house in the Philippines. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's jump right into it. You are thinking about possibly building a house in the Philippines, and that was a long time dream of my wife and I, Flora and I's future plans for retirement, was to actually build a house in the Philippines for a couple of reasons. Obviously, and most importantly, was to retire in the Philippines. And so we're here now, and we'll be back and forth throughout, different times of the year. And we're actually getting ready to take off and go back to the States for a while and do some business. But anyway, also number two reason was to help her family out and give them a great place to live. And so they work together with us on the house. So let's get into it. How to build a house in the Philippines. Number one, you must get your land. Okay, this kind of goes without saying. Get clear title on your land, and that's a whole nother video within itself. It's not really that difficult. A lot of people really stress about it, but I would just suggest that you don't take anybody's word for anything. Just like you would back in the United States or in the West, everything has to be done legally. And you have to kind of figure out a little bit about, the legal process here. So we hired a lawyer, and I'm not going to go into that, but that's what we did. And we purchased our property way back in 2010. So that's what this video is about, is the process. So number one, get your documents prepared. There are documents that you have to you get prepared in order to have a build site and start construction on a new house here in the Philippines, just like anywhere else. And that's going to be kind of a common thread. It's not really that hard to build a house in the Philippines, but you do have to take some steps. And maybe a lot of you aren't used to building a house, maybe you are, I don't know. Prepare your documents. This assumes that you have bought some land already and are ready to go to the next step. There are permits to be paid, site inspections that need to be done by certain government officials. Usually in the Philippines, somebody can do all that stuff for a fee. And what I mean is, what we did, we got an engineer from the city, and I'll tell you more about that later. But he knew a guy who could get all your permits drawn up, and he would do all the work, and then he would pass it through the bureaucratic process, and we'd be ready to build for a fee. And that's just the cost of doing business in the Philippines. But on the other hand, we didn't really have to do anything except pay the money, and it wasn't some huge thing. I mean, you're talking about a major investment here, so there are costs involved in it. So prepare your documents, and pay somebody to do it. That's just the cost of business, cost of doing business here in the Philippines. Number two, hire an architect or an engineer. We used a city engineer to draw up the plans for our house. It's a guy that we knew, we had met. We had inquired at the city on a piece of property, and we'd done the buying process already. So we had met a few people in that process, and we really liked this guy. And he's an engineer for the city, and he offered to draw up a plan for the house. So he did that. Choose somebody you trust. Have a good reason to trust them, not just because they sound good, but build a relationship. And this is another common theme that I'm going to suggest to you. Build relationships with the people that you have here on the ground in the Philippines, and your process will be a lot smoother. Choose somebody you trust. Personal knowledge is always best. So hire an architect. The second third is find your construction company or builder. We did not go through a construction company. You make your own decision on that. There are plenty of small construction companies that can build you a house. What we did, we had an engineer, and we had asked him to stop by the site from time to time and check on how the builders or the guys were building the house. So he did that. We hired a foreman, which was a veteran of building many houses, and he knew how to follow the plans. We had detailed plans drawn up as specifications on the width of the support beams. We had the amount of rebar that had to go in there. We had the whole 9 yards planned out. We had the whole building was completely drawn up, so that's a good thing. You don't want to just kind of wing it. You know, we built almost a 3-story house, 2 full stories with a rooftop patio, and we may enclose that one of these days. We're going to put a roof on part of it in the near future. So you want to make sure your house is structurally sound. So definitely, you know, get your engineer and have a proper plan drawn. Ask your builder or your foreman about some projects. In our case, Flora's brothers had actually worked with this guy quite a bit, so they knew the kind of houses that he had built, and they'd actually, I think, sent us some pictures, and the foreman actually sent us some pictures of some completed work that he had done. So my advice is, you know, go into it very wise. Think through your process, find your builder or your construction company, in our case a foreman, and, you know, proceed. Be very wise, be very nice. This is a polite society here in the Philippines. Don't become the ugly American or the ugly Westerner, and you'll be doing well. All right, get prices for material lists and get estimates for all of your different products. Now, you may want to do this in phases. You may say, okay, we're going to prepare the ground. What's the excavation cost going to be? Or in our case, we didn't have an excavation, but we did have a demolition. And so I'm going to try to put in some of our experiences here, but you know, that could be one of the estimates that you get first. What about your foundation work? That's another phase of getting your estimates on your materials and your proposal list. Concrete work estimates. You know, these houses mostly are built with hollow block, filled hollow block with rebar reinforcement. And so, you know, as you go along, it's a good idea to get estimates on these different phases. Plumbing estimates, electrical estimates, finishing estimates such as your kitchen cabinetry, your lights, you know, all these finishing touches that you're going to have. So get a materials list for or prices or estimates for each phase. Now, full disclosure, you know, Randall and Flora, the Philippines project, we did not do that. Now, we did not have a disaster either, but we built this, you know, I'd say one thing at a time, just like you have to do a house. You know, we just kind of paid as we went along, and materials kind of crept up a little bit in price as we went along. You know, it is what it is. So get your estimates. They may be higher by the time you get done. I mean, look at the inflation that, you know, the world is in right now. Things are always going to go up, and don't let that dissuade you from building a house, because materials will always go up. You know, I remember I built last year, I started in about May of last year, 2021, and I built some storage units for some on a piece of property that we had bought. And so lumber was just in the United States was just going through the roof. Remember that? If you're from the West, it was crazy. But and said, oh, don't wait, you know, don't buy your lumber now. People told me, you know, it's too high. How do you afford it now? I'm like, it's never going to go down, and it may drop, but you know, on the average, it's always going to go up. So once you bought it, you know, my lumber that I put in there is never going to go up. I've already purchased it, and my rents are coming in on my storage units. And that should happen as long as I keep good maintenance. That should happen in, you know, for several years to come. So, you know, those kind of things, don't let those hold you back from building a house in the Philippines. The next is hire a good foreman. And that's an essential part. Make sure they are knowledgeable. We hired a foreman instead of a construction company because, you know, one thing, we had my brothers-in-law, my wife's brothers on site. So between the foreman and the two brothers, they knew quite a bit about construction. The engineer was there as well. But hire a good foreman at least if you don't hire a construction company. Nobody says the company's going to be any. You know, so one guy should lead the project. okay? And then you oversee the project as time goes by. It was a lot cheaper. I think we did about 600 pesos a day, which was about $11 to $12 at that time for the foreman's salary. So, you know, 6 days a week times 11 or $12, the foreman's not really that expensive, and your laborers are even less, or they were at least back in I'm going to say 18 and 19 we built the house. So yeah, he handled the workflow. I mean, he knew what to do, the foreman did. He could get the plans out. I'd see him on video. He'd roll the plans out every morning, and he would look at it, he would plan the work, and then he would instruct the workers to go do what he said, and the project really went pretty smoothly. So I was really happy about that. My sister-in-law, she acted, I call her a site superintendent, because, you know, she handed out the money, she bought she bought the materials, and, you know, so she was the site superintendent. Yeah, so my sister-in-law, she was so invaluable throughout the whole process. I mean, words cannot express the gratitude that my wife and I have towards my sister-in-law. She went out and made all the deals. One time we went to a hardware store, we were back after basically everything was roughed in, most of the concrete skimming was done, everything was pretty much done. It was not painted, there were no tiles, so we were in purchasing tile, and of course, you know, an American or a white guy goes in to a big hardware store, and you get waited on pretty quick because they think this guy's got money, you know, so you're a top priority. And I'm used to that, as far as that's what happens here. They think you got more money than your average Filipino, and they may be right, they may be wrong. But my sister-in-law said, yeah, when I used to come in here, I had to beg for somebody to you know, wait on me. But she did a great job, and she may be, you know, she may be dropping 30,000 pesos, or I don't even know how much money, but she spent, I mean, she went through a lot of money building the house. So she was very invaluable. She scheduled the material deliveries, she bought the materials, she every phase. I mean, she hired the workers, she paid the workers. So you're going to need somebody like that. You can't do that really. You know, it's just kind of hard to do that, you know, from America or from wherever you're at. So let's go to the next point. That was hire a good foreman or builder. But then the next one is set up a payment plan for the project. Get an agreement with your contractor or your foreman or whoever's going to, you know, take care of all the details about the project, you know, instruct the contractor on how the payments are going to be made. Filipinos are used to, construction workers are used to being paid at least 2 times a week, on Wednesday and then on Saturday. They work 6 days a week, so hardworking guys, and so yeah, they work 6 days a week. Be prepared in advance. Somebody may ask for an advance on their salary, and we did that on a few occasions. We also got burned on one guy. He took the last week of the project, he took 1,000 peso advance, and we never saw that money again. He didn't come back the next day, so I guess he got us a little bit, but you know, it's 20 bucks, so I'm not sweating that too much. One thing we did too, and it's pretty common here, they would have what they call merienda twice a day, about 10 o'clock and about 2 o'clock every day. They break and they have a snack, and maybe a Coke or a coffee, or yeah, they drink coffee even though it's 90-something degrees. So yeah, we would provide that. So that was in the budget, didn't cost a whole lot. Sometimes we'd have, you know, maybe 8-10 people working, maybe 5 people sometimes, and up as high as 25 people working on the job if it was a concrete pour day. So, you know, we supplied all the merienda for that. You know, for 20 bucks you can buy a lot of snacks, and so, you know, we kind of paid for that. We did several lunches, you know, like on a big concrete pour day. One day we had a goat killed, and they actually put the goat blood on the foundation. I can't really answer questions about that. I don't really know why it was done, but that's what was done, and then they had the goat for lunch. So, that was an interesting thing. But be prepared in advance for how you set up your payment plan for the project. And the next point is entitled Finishing Touches and Details. Now we're talking about, and that's something we've done over the past, during a pandemic mostly. When we visited a project in 2019, again, everything was roughed in, but the walls were not smooth like you see now. There was no cabinetry. There was no tile on the floor. Electrical fixtures weren't put in. These are the finishing touches and details. And there's a lot of skim coating. If you don't know what skim coating is, basically, and I don't know 100%, but I know it's a mixture of pure cement and water and maybe some other compound, and they throw it up on the wall, and then they trowel it down really smooth, and you get those smooth walls like what you see behind me. And they did a fantastic job on the skim coating, and my two brothers are excellent at that. So you got tile, paint, kitchen counters, cabinetry, windows and doors. You got to pick out all that stuff, and then air conditioning was kind of a final touch for me. I wanted the next time I come back to have an air conditioned room to sleep in, and I'm telling you what, we've been here 3 months, and it's been an absolute blessing to have a good, reliable air conditioning unit, and I've got 3 of them in three different places. So yeah, that's kind of the finishing touches kind of thing that that you're going to have to do. So once you get pretty much done with everything, you get your tile and everything put in like you want it, you're going to want to do with your crew like a punch list. When the building is completed, you make a punch list, and a punch list is just a list of things you do a walkthrough, or your leadership, excuse me, I got to take a drink here. Your leadership will do a walkthrough with the builder and point out things that need to be fixed before the crew and the company can leave the premises and never come back without being charged. So you go through, and it's as simple as taking a little blue tape or piece of tape, putting it on a wall here, by an electrical outlet there, by a leaky pipe over here, or maybe a seal that's not done properly somewhere, a toilet leaks or a sink, So these things, that's your punch list. You do that with the builder. It's a list you make of all things that need to be improved before the site is called done. So make sure you develop the punch list, get the contractor to agree to it, schedule time for everybody to come back and complete all these items. And when that's done, guess what? It's time to move in if you're ready to do that. So we weren't here when it was time to move in, but her family was downstairs, and they had already moved into their apartments, and so that's a good time for everybody. Time to enjoy your new home. That's one of the last points. Time to enjoy your new home. This is never as simple as it's laid out. You can make the best plan in the world, but I always say this, whether it was in business or some kind of new venture I was trying, or it could be as simple as changing an alternator on a van or something like that. Expect that it's not going to go well. If you have that expectation going in to building your house, because you're going to have problems, just expect that everything's not going to go great. So, if you have that expectation, so when those little problems come up, and they will, you're not going to be surprised. Sorry, but my throat's really getting dry. There's going to be mistakes made. There's going to be promises broken. People leave the job. There's going to be delays on materials and supplies. Expect all these things. It happens in the United States of America, that perfect country that I grew up in. It happens everywhere. It's not just Philippines. So, remember, you're dealing with a different culture. You need to learn a little bit more about the culture, and maybe you can get along better. Just try not to be, try to respect their culture. They're very polite people, and you should be polite